My name is Michael Klindt, and it's spelled Klindt. And when I was growing up, teachers would always be like, Klindent. So I started going by K, just Michael K. And too, because there were so many Michaels in my school, you need to know which one. So between my last name being weird and having so many Michaels, people know me as Michael K.
Can you tell me your part in this project and also what you do for a living?
Yeah, so I accepted the opportunity to be the host on this particular project, Springfield History Museum Illumination Project. And I took that on for a few reasons. Number one, being is that we're trying to capture the story of the African American history or roots in Springfield. When I was in 8th grade, this was in like 1993, I did a project called African American History Project. And myself and 4 other middle school students, with the mentorship of Bob Bolden, Miso KawaiJoe, Coleman, Mr. White, we did what's called the African American History Project. And we interviewed the 4 eldest living matriarchs, African American matriarchs of Eugene. So Miss Washington, Miss Reynolds, Miss Mims, Miss Johnson. And so when when this project came to my attention and they invited me to the meeting, I thought, man, I helped capture the legacy of those women who are no longer here. That was almost 30 years ago. And I just thought, as a part of my own legacy, like, I should probably be a part of helping capture this moment in time, just to bring that full circle. And I'm also a teacher here at Springfield High School. This is my 16th year. So I also have roots in Springfield, and I thought, being as that I teach digital arts, like I teach students how to use the camera and everything to help pass on, continue the legacy of the work that I did. Like grabbing a camera almost 30 years ago, helped give purpose and meaning and direction to my life. And so it's only natural that I pass that on. And a lot of students here that are struggling and maybe they're not into sports and into they don't feel connected with some of their teachers, especially people that, being the only Black teacher in the building, other students who may look like me or have some cultural continuities, identifications with me, showing them the camera, giving them a way to tell their story and to understand the significance of their voice, whether it be in front of the camera or behind the camera, is hugely important.
Can you tell me a little bit about your family and sort of your origin story here in Springfield?
Yeah, so I actually was born in Germany and I was adopted in Germany. That's an interesting story in itself because I'm biracial, and my biological mother is white, and my biological mother's husband is also white. So that kind of tells you the story of what happened, and they were going to work things out, but as a part of working things out, they weren't going to keep me, right? So I got adopted, and when I was around 2 years old, I moved to Tacoma, Washington, where I was raised until my adopted mom passed away. I was about 12 years old, and that's when I had to move to Eugene to stay with my adopted dad. And I didn't grow up with him. They got divorced when I was pretty young, and didn't really know him. And I was really impacted by having to leave all my friends from the neighborhood that I grew up with my whole life, and then moving to Eugene, where like I went to Cal Young Middle School. At the time, there were 2 other black students there, and coming from Tacoma, this is the early 90s, so it was like I had like the overall, pinstripe overall, jean shorts with the one strap down and the Raider starter jacket and Nike Cortez, and like I was rocking like what we rocked. And I got made fun of for it, and I was so confused. Like, I got called the N-word for the first time, and it wasn't even by like people hostile. It was like one of the only people that was friendly toward me asked me if he could call me the N-word with the R at the end. So I was just so confused by the move and the trauma of my mom passing away and all that, that I ended up running away from home when I was 15, and I've been out on my own ever since. And like, I was the kid, I was known to like, I lived in the back of a car for a long time. I bought it for like $200 from the junkyard. I was 15, I didn't have a license, but I pull up to the party, whatever, fall asleep in the back, go sneak into the YMCA shower, and then go to South Eugene High School. Like, I was that kid, you know? But the thing that kept me grounded was the creativity, was the music, was being able to perform, was recording and stuff like that. Otherwise, a lot of people that I was surrounded with ended up going to prison or just making certain life, decisions that to this day, it's been harder for those people to find success. And somehow I was able to stay grounded enough, even though I was in one of the worst situations that everybody I knew, because like I said, I was homeless and I had a lot of trauma and mental stuff that I was dealing with. But somehow I was able to transmute that into being here.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, how did you come from there to being the only black teacher at Springfield High School?
Right, so my Springfield origin story, I first encountered Springfield in, I think it was around 1993. I don't think it was my third concert, but it's the third concert I remember. My first concert I ever did was in 92. It was at the Sheldon Community Center. The second one I did was at the Lane County Fair. The third one that I remember was in Springfield. It was at this little club called Voltage, and it was like a club that all ages, where they would have hip hop performances, and it was like right over off of Mohawk. I think where Winco and all that area is. There was like a little spot that I went and I rapped at, and that was the first time I'd been to Springfield. Fast forward to something like 2005, 2006. When they said, oh, someday a computer is going to take our jobs. I was a radio board operator, so I put in all of the commercials at this smooth jazz radio station, put all the songs in on CD, and then the commercials were run off 8 tracks and laser discs, and then they brought in the computer that was automated, and so they didn't need board ops anymore. So I was in Portland. I moved from Portland to Springfield because the person who I called my mother, because she took me in for a while when I was a teenager. Now I was married with 2 small children, and we all moved in with her in a 2-bedroom trailer park in 53rd and Main. And it was the 4 of us sleeping on the floor. We didn't even have a bed. And that was when I first became a Springfield resident. And ended up moving back to Eugene, and over about the course of 2 years, like built a house. Like didn't just buy a house, built a house, which I like to brag about that, just because, when you talk about perseverance and resilience and whatnot, going from literally nothing, no bed, sleeping on the floor in a trailer park, to like building a home with a studio and stuff like that. I like to talk to my students about that story, because to show them what's possible. Like, you can go from living in the back of a car and being a high school dropout and doing well for yourself, and then having everything taken away and then build it back again. I like to tell students that story as as a model for what's possible, especially since a lot of them are going through those same struggles too. And so I was doing well for myself, and I ended up getting on the radio. I was a DJ on 104.7 KDUK. I did Friday Night Hype, Saturday Night Hot Mix, Sunday Slow Jams. I actually started Friday Night Hype and Freestyle Fridays, where I was freestyling on the air every Friday night on the radio, which is crazy because everybody told me, I was like, I'm gonna get my music played on KDUK. And everybody's like, they don't play local music on KDUK. They don't play local music on KDUK. So I got up there and I was doing an interview because I was a producer for this big dance company, and they were doing a big show, and they were like, come do the interview. So I went up there. He was like, you do music? Yeah. You got a CD? Boom, back pocket. Listen to it. This is pretty good. Played a song that night on the radio. This is after years of people telling me, no, they don't play local music.
Now you know, if you say that you freestyle in the presence of other black people, that is going to need to be proven, so I insist. On a freestyle.
A freestyle?
Oh, for real?
Right now.
Oh, you said you do it.
Right now, with no need to pipe down. Like
Freestyle.
Actually freestyle, no pencil to write down.
Freestyle.
Any words that I say like off the top of the head. You want me to twist my words right now like I'm twisting a dread? You want me to bring the gifts like I'm Santa with sled? You want to ask if I can go back to the past like Bill and Ted? Hop in the phone booth, maybe go back to the past, maybe to the future. How long will it last? I don't know. I feel like I'm maybe on the spot, but they say I'm like a sauna, feeling kind of hot. But of course, I got the camera in my face, and plus I got the stamina so I can leave no trace of where I've been or where I'm going to. There is no knowing, but when it comes to the microphone, I'm so flowing. I'm flowing sort of like a river. I'm in Oregon, where it's heckin' pretty. Everybody was talking about that, but I'm doing a thing about the Springfield city. And when it comes down to the nitty gritty, there's no need to pity. Yeah, that's all. That's it. So I did that
Challenge accepted.
every Friday night on KDUK. And I did it so consistently that they put me on. They said, we want you to be one of our people on air. So fast forward, Springfield High School got a 21st century grant, and they wanted to fund an after-school program to teach students about writing songs and recording and making beats. So because I was known on the radio, when they was looking for somebody, they were like, I wonder if he'll do it. And I had actually just resigned the radio like months before that, and started going to the U of O, and I was just gonna do school. But then when they reached out, I was like, you know what? Just getting paid to teach kids how to make beats. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do it. So that was 16 years ago, I think. And that first year, with the grant money, I got to buy all this equipment and stuff, and I had a small group of students that would come every day after school, and Jasmine Brown was one of those students. My first year here at the after school program, she used to come in after school and write songs and record. After a couple of years of doing that, and then learning my story about being a homeless teen and being a dropout and whatever, and seeing that kids who didn't really like coming to school would still come after school to hang out with me, and that would help get them to go to class because they couldn't come hang out with me if they were skipping all the time. So they were like, will you come do that during the day? So I became a transition specialist working with freshmen that were at risk of maybe dropping out, and just like going to kid's house and knocking on the door like, come on, let's go to school. Oh, I can't wake up, I ain't got an alarm clock. Oh, we'll buy you an alarm clock. Like, we just tried to make it happen. And after a couple of years of doing that, they said, we want you in the classroom. So Springfield School District actually paid for me to go to grad school to get my teaching license and my master's degree through the Pathways program.
Nice. What are some of the memories of being here in Springfield that really stick out to you?
From what I can remember from that first show, that stuck out because that's one of my loves is performing. Other memories that stand out in Springfield. I mean, a lot of that is here at school. You know, like seeing somebody who doesn't know anything about music or whatever, and then like discovering something or writing a whole verse and then recording it and hearing it back, and then the look on their face, like they can't believe that that's them that they're listening back to, because they never thought they could do that. I remember one of the English teachers here at Springfield said, "Hey, we're doing a poetry unit, but I want to see if maybe you could help them turn their poetry into songs." And so we not only did that, but we entered them into, it was this speech and hearing contest where it was like, make a rap music video. So we took their poems, we turned them into songs, and then we recorded music videos and we submitted them, and we won like, I think first, second, and third place at this contest, right? First place, the kids got iPads and stuff, and like at the Wildest Theater, I got to be the host for this little event talent contest. And actually my sons, when they were little, like my youngest son is now 18, but when he was like, must have been 4, like he got out there and he was breakdancing and doing the robot and doing all of that, you know. So a lot of my most fondest memories in Springfield are around the arts, and specifically with young people encountering the arts and witnessing like the transformative power of the arts.
Can I ask you, in the 16 years that you've been here at Springfield High, how many Black teachers have you seen come and go?
In the 16 years that I've been here, I don't know of any other Black classroom teachers. To my memory, the 16 years I've been here, there have only been 4 Black employees at a time. So when I was a transition specialist, there were no Black teachers, and it was myself and Gene Chisholm. We were both transition specialists. So the 2 Black staff that worked here were assigned to the at-risk kids. The third person who worked here, Daryl, was a hall monitor, so making sure nobody's fighting and doing whatever in the hall. And the fourth one was Harry, the janitor. And the running joke was the superintendent of the school district at the time would always call me Gene and call him Michael. So there were only 4 Black people working here, and our names were interchangeable at the times. And yeah, since then, you know, when Chisholm left and they got a new transitional specialist, like Deseric, like was a Black staff person, and they were a transition specialist as well. So it seems like when some Black people move out, new Black people move in, kind of in the same positions, hall monitor stuff, like transition specialists stuff, working with at-risk kids stuff, but not in the classroom.
What do you think, if any, your impact being here makes for not just the Black students, but the student body in general, considering they're not encountering Black teachers in the classroom?
I'd like to think that it has a huge impact. One of the things that I think makes it have such a huge impact is that I show up as myself. I don't like try to put on like this is the way teachers act, so I'm gonna act like a teacher, right? Now, what I'm not saying is, because I know some people are gonna hear that and think, oh, that means you're not professional, you're not. No, that's not what I'm saying. That just means that if I'm gonna, my sense of humor, some of my slang, some of my mannerisms are going to be culturally evident that they're different than any other person in the school. And yet, I try to make sure to display and model that, like, no, I'm not just good with technology, right? It's not just that I know how to work a camera, or music or programs, but like, you want to talk history, right? Social studies, psychology. Like, we're going to have some conversations and you're going to see a black man in the front of the class that is well educated and knowledgeable on all fronts. You know, I was a high school dropout. I graduated from the U of O, top 10% of my class. Like, you're going to be able to see that, you know, that a black man in the classroom is capable of all the things that maybe some of their families would have them to believe are not capable of. So not only does that model for the other black students, like, oh no, we got this, like, come on, step up, let's, like, don't hide, like, come on, be your full self, and everybody else gets to witness that too, and, you know, take inspiration. I want everybody, regardless of race, to be like, oh, I had this one teacher when I was in high school that inspired me to fill in the blank.
Can I ask, what are the two biggest opportunities you have found being in Springfield, and the two biggest challenges that you have found being in Springfield?
I'll start with the challenges, and man, it's sometimes, like, talking. That's been one thing that's been difficult with this whole project, is that we're doing the Illumination project and we're highlighting all these wonderful African American folks with different perspectives and different experiences, but our commonality is that we're of African descent, and racism and race comes up strong in every conversation, and you almost think like, oh, here we go again, another black person talking about being black and racism and stuff like that. And so it almost feels like cliche in a way, and yet, as much as I don't want to talk about it, there are just some things that I continue to be baffled by. I mean, to this day, like, I've had multiple staff say the N-word in front of me. Luckily this person retired, but when Chisholm was here, so like I said, there was only a few of us black staff here, and it was after a staff meeting and we were in the hall talking, and this teacher walked right through us and then got about 20 feet away, turned around and go, "You two at the same place at the same time? You must be plotting to overthrow the school," and then chuckled and kept walking. And I'm just, I was like, oh, do you know him? Like, do you have like an inside? And no, like, we were trying to process what had just happened. Just things like being in the locker bay, doing locker check, and like somebody's like, oh, hey, how's BSU going? And it's like, that's a fair question. I'm the BSU advisor, but like, do you really not know how to talk to me about anything else except black related stuff? You know, like, you're constantly just reminded that you're the other, even if it's not hostile or if it's not hate based or whatever. It's just a constant reminder. Like, I'll forget that I'm the other sometimes. I'm just doing my thing, and it's like, I don't get to forget for too long, because somebody in some way, be it negative or not, is going to remind me. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges. I think, though, the opportunity is just how much autonomy that I feel like I have. Like, I feel like there are no major obstacles. And when I want to get something done, when I want to achieve something, when I want to have something, I don't really notice many people or anybody really saying no or saying you can't do that. And I feel like even this school, like, they let me pretty much do my thing, and they let me be the expert in my domain and do my thing. And so even with the students, it's like, man, you got access to all this equipment, you got access to all this technology, you got access to all this information, like, and I have a decent number of students who already have built a future off of it, built a career off of it. But I just feel like it's the tip of the iceberg. Like, I feel like a significant amount of students who are willing to focus and take the opportunity for what it is could build a thriving future off of what's being offered here.
So you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but do you think being Black has in any way kind of shaped the way you navigate through living here in Springfield? And I also want to preface that response with having you consider, do you think the mixed race experience has presented you with different challenges or advantages as you navigate around Springfield?
So I've definitely worked in Springfield more than I've lived in Springfield. I've only lived in Springfield for a few years, and that was before I was a teacher. And I found when I lived in Springfield, I was pretty much just, it was like at the house or at Safeway. Like, I was not out and about engaging at Springfield at all, which I also think is informative too, because I just didn't feel like there were really opportunities for me to go engage with, or if there was a community here, I wasn't aware of it. It was just, I felt kind of like isolated out doing my thing. As a teacher, as someone who works in Springfield, it definitely impacts my experience. And you know, they talk about retaining Black teachers and how difficult that is, and I know why that is. I have to convince myself to go back the next year every year, and that's partly because being a teacher is difficult, right? But I do feel like being a Black teacher has its own set of challenges that make it hard to stay. I do like the fact that Springfield High School in particular has a bit more diversity than there is in the area. Maybe not with the teaching staff, but with the student population. And so I think that helps. But in general, yeah, it's like I said, I would sometimes when I'm doing my thing, I forget that I'm Black and somebody's gonna remind me. So yeah, I think that shapes your experience. Now, as far as being mixed, I think that's a little bit more complex and nuanced. It's one of those things where you feel like you're in the middle, or like I never feel like white folks are like, oh, well, you're only part Black, so we're just gonna treat you part Black. And like, no, no, white folks don't tend to treat you as part Black out here, Black folks, depending on who it is and what the situation it is or whatever, might remind you that, that you're mixed too. So you're like, okay, cool. I'm like in the middle of everybody. I'm trying to get in where I fit in, and that's its own set of psychological labyrinth to work through.
So when it comes to the Black community here in Springfield, you talked about you couldn't find those spaces. What would you like to see change or develop here in Springfield when it comes to the Black community itself?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really in Springfield. I haven't really noticed too many opportunities to build and have community. Even the Illumination project, a lot of people had said when they were in the room that they hadn't been in a room with that many Black people in Springfield before. And it seems like there were a lot of people that were thankful that that space was being created to be able to do this. So that does show me that there is a desire for that.
How many Black people were in the room? People said they hadn't been around that many Black people in space in Springfield, but about how many people were in that room?
I'd say the meeting with the biggest attendance probably had, I don't know, 12 to 15 Black folks.
So it was a big deal for them to be around 12 to 15, 12 to 14 other Black people.
Yes.
Which says a lot.
Absolutely. Which is a common theme, because when we'll have a BSU meeting and you have 10 to 12 students in the room, they've never been in the room with that many Black people either. And a lot of them, when I ask, what brings you to BSU? Like, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to see happen? A lot of them are just like, I just like being in the room, just being able to see other people that look like me, and we can vent a little bit. We can just let our guard down and just be ourselves. And it seems like that's kind of like what the adults are too. Like, wow, I'm in a room where people want to hear our stories and let us have kind of a voice in what we think should happen here and there, and we get to just fully be ourselves. It's kind of crazy that that's the situation, that it's so new. And so I guess what I'd like to see is that not be such a rarity. And I'm super thankful for the Springfield History Museum for providing that space and providing that opportunity. But I also feel like we should be creating those opportunities within our community as well. Like, we shouldn't be waiting for other folks to create those opportunities to come together and build. And one of the meetings that we had was at Brian's studio, right? OG Studios. And I didn't even know that studio was there. And I think a lot of other people didn't as well. And it just really got me thinking, like, man, I'm not aware of who the Black business owners are in Springfield. And I feel like I want to know. And that's just something that needs to happen so that we're not in the situation where we can be supporting each other's businesses and be welcome to come build in each other's spaces. And like, I would love to have more people in the community come and talk to my students, and even beyond this project, come in and tell their story on camera. And there's just a lot of building that I think needs to happen, and that we can't always wait for somebody else to create those opportunities. We need to be more active in creating those opportunities.
So, speaking of the Illumination project, how has it been for you as an interviewer, now the interviewee, hearing all of these stories of people who are from Springfield, from the community? What impact has that had?
The impact that it's had on me is, so there are several things that stand out. Number one, I'm a bit surprised by how difficult it was to find people to interview, and particularly when we were trying to find an elderly Black woman with roots in Springfield. We almost ended up just interviewing some Black elderly women from Eugene. But the fact that it was so hard to find somebody, I feel like was illuminating in itself. And it really told me, you cannot have somebody from Eugene tell the story as if Eugene and Springfield were the same thing. Because if they were the same thing, it would be just as easy to find one in Springfield as Eugene. So you can't really make that substitution. And it made it so that when we were able to talk to Lois Reynolds, I was really grateful, because it's like, oh yeah, like the perception is true. There weren't really many of us out here, and those who were out here, you had to be strong. Like you had to, it sounds like, have a little bit of thick skin in order to just sustain and not, you know, the people who I interviewed were very gracious, right? They were saying, oh, there wasn't that much, and it, you know, it was overall, it was very pleasant, and yes, people were welcoming. But then they kind of would tell like a little story, like, oh yeah, and there were a couple of situations that were, they so happened to, and then explain something that most people wouldn't be able to tolerate, or you know, would run for the hills just in one of those encounters. And they had many of these encounters. So it really showed me why there aren't as many people out here. And just common themes like encounters with law enforcement is a pretty common theme. And I know that that's a difficult one for people to talk about and to think about and to wrestle with, but when you have all of these people with the same sort of stories, that it's not like they're all in a room together, like they don't know each other's talking about it. I'm hearing all of these different stories. And then it, you know, makes you think like, oh, there must be something to that. And one of the common themes from the elders to the young people are like, man, just be you, like speak up for, like, don't let people do that to you, like speak up. And ultimately at the end of the day, it's really all about unity. It's about building community for us and unifying and resolving our differences. And it's about the greater unity between everybody. And I find that inspirational.
All right, my last question comes to the students. You're a teacher and you've encountered generations of Black children and children in the community, the wider community here, but specifically looking at the Black children. If there would be one thing that you could change about Springfield that you think would make their lives better, make their experience better, what would that be?
There just has to be one?
If you could think of more than one, but...
The first one is there needs to be more Black teachers. Just needs to be. And that's hard to say if it's more so the school or the educational system, or that more Black people aren't interested in teaching, or they just don't encounter the opportunity, or a little bit of all of that. And so in all of those different domains, somehow we need to, get more. I know a lot of the students that I work with and encounter aren't interested in teaching. They look at what we're doing and like, man, I don't know how you do it. That's not. So that's something that I think needs to be resolved, but that's a bigger issue. I think one of the biggest things for Black students, and really this is for all students, I guess, in a way too, but it's a lot of students, when I ask, like, what is it you want to do? Like, what's the vision you have for yourself? What's the future that you see for yourself? And even through junior, senior, they're not sure. They don't really have a vision for themselves. They haven't identified their passion, or a lot of times if you ask, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Like, they don't always know how to articulate their strengths. So I think that particular for Black folks, we can focus there. There needs to be a lot more work and time for them to just develop their vision, to develop their values and who they want to be, self-knowledge. Otherwise, they're not going to see the purpose for math or for writing or for learning the periodic table because they don't see themselves in it. That's the same thing that happened with me. I didn't learn algebra because I knew didn't need it. It had nothing to do with me until I went to college to study recording technology. And they said, in order to understand acoustics and how to measure the frequencies that are bouncing off the wall that you need to treat so that you can get a good mix, you calculate that using what? Algebra. Having known that, I would have changed my focus. So I would like to see more of that sort of work with our Black students, which is like financial literacy, entrepreneurship, creating a vision for themselves and really understanding, having self-knowledge, so that all of the other subjects can actually resonate and connect with them. Because what ends up happening otherwise is they have a hard time finding their place and finding their way here and feeling connected here. And that's when all the stories that you hear, like of not getting along with teachers or teachers targeting that and what, all those sort of things. And I'm not saying that would solve the issue even of a lot of our students feeling targeted by teachers. Like when they speak up in class or if they're a little bit loud, they get sent out the room, but maybe somebody else, they get noticed more, right? And I don't even think it has to be intentional. Like I said, I get noticed more for being a Black teacher, whether good or bad. It's just, you notice more. And so I think that they'll be impacted by that more. But when you are all in on, you have a vision and you have something that's driving you forward, like all of that just becomes chatter, because then it's like, hey, I'm not letting you get in the way of my trajectory. I know where I'm going, and either help me get there or like bounce. Like if you're a teacher that's not going to help me get to my trajectory, my goal, I need another classroom. I'm going to go see Mr. K. He's going to walk me down to the counselor's office and we're going to get me into a different classroom, right? But that starts with knowing the trajectory that is being hindered by all of the other challenges that come with being a Black student in a very white area.
Thank you. Meanwhile, I think culture is the thing I've noticed, like working with the kids. The Black American children, because obviously Blackness is not monolithic, don't know anything about Black culture. Even to hear that they have been around 10 or 12 other Black people, it's like, don't you have Black families? So the families aren't deep. They must be very superficial or immediate families because they're not even getting in their life experience the opportunity to be with a large gathering. But having kids tell me they don't even know what greens are. Normally you have an opinion about our food, like I don't like that, but just to not even know, to not even have a clue, but to be a whole Black child, an American Black child, whose families are, descendants of enslaved people from this country. I'm like, how is that possible that you don't know anything about your culture?
And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't articulate. That's partially what I meant when I said self-knowledge. When I was saying knowing your future, your vision, your trajectory, and self-knowledge. I think a significant part of that self-knowledge is you can't know who you are if you don't know where you come from. And the fact that so many of the children, especially because in the history books, they don't see themselves represented, their history is not there, so they don't know that history. how are you going to have self-knowledge without knowing that, right? And then not just from the history books too, but that experiential knowledge, right? That experiential knowledge. Once you experience roots, I mean, think about just you know, I'm a hip hop head, you know, I'm a hip hop head. 30 years I've been a hip hop artist, and the person who named hip hop was African Bambaataa, who was a gang member, a gang leader, a notorious gang leader in New York, and changed his name to Africa Bambaataa and created Zulu Nation after he took a trip to Africa. He had an encounter with his roots that not only changed the trajectory of himself, but of an entire culture that I identify myself with, right? And so, yeah, I think with self-knowledge, a big part of that is roots, is culture, for sure.
Don't say we do see ourselves in the history books, but it's always slavery, Martin Luther King,
Rosa Parks,
Thomas Jefferson, Rosa Parks, which that's a whole other conversation. I cannot stand that. I can't stand that. I think it makes our children not see the value in blackness, because the blackness they're taught is the most depressing, downtrodden blackness ever.
Absolutely. And I'm glad there's at least some strong educators that I've encountered who are changing that narrative, and in all the programs and things that I've been a part of that teach Black youth, when they encounter that history that they never got, like they're moved by it. They feel empowered by learning it. They feel robbed that they didn't get to learn it, but also they feel extremely grateful and empowered by learning it. And they teach it too. They spread that knowledge. So I know that there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, because I hate that our Black babies think the only thing great about being Black is Egypt. That's the best thing that's ever happened. It is important. Anyway, I think the interview was amazing.
All right, and with that, Illumination Project, Springfield History Museum. I'm the host, but we decided as a team that I might be able to add to the conversation. So I hope that I've done that. And signing off till next time.